Hello and welcome to my second attempt, playthrough, whichever way you want to call it, of this new space age game. And that's really what I've learned. The big lesson I learned from my first attempt at this was that it is almost like a new game. It's a completely new day. Everything is different. Anyway, I learned a lot from that first attempt, and I intend on putting it all to action in this one. We will probably still learn some lessons. We will probably still make mistakes. That's kind of how this goes. Anyway, let's get it started. New game. Yep, free play. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to double the richness of the crude oil on Novice, just because that wound me up on the first go. I'm going to turn off the cliffs on Novice. I actually didn't mind the cliffs on Gleba or Fulgara, but they're very, very frustrating for me on Novice, so they're gone. I dealt with it in the last one. I'm not dealing with it in this one. Enemy, we're going to increase our starting area again, as is, which is what I tend to do. I like a lot of space. I like a bit of breathing room. But other than that, that's it. Let's go. Alright then, there's not really much to say. I just need to do it, so let's do it. Alright then, we've got a pretty nice starter factory here, doing a nice little job for me. I am pretty happy, Now, the original plan was to, well, the original plan from the first series was to build a starter factory that got me to space. And I was really kind of focused on that one kind of target. But this playthrough, what I've decided is to go back to the original kind of strategy, which was to build a small little starter base, and then that would allow me to build the bigger base. You know, I'm going back a step in strategy to a certain extent. I thought that was going to be the way that I was going to be playing the game. I was just going to build a starter factory that would get me to space, and then that was when the game really began. But thank you. Oh, that whilst we're here, let's just get that going. There. But with this whole new space age thing, yeah, I'm just going back to what I know, which is just a very, very simple base, or at least that was the plan anyway. Halfway through building this thing, I had to wander around the map, just to really kind of get my bearings and see what the Factorio gods had given me. And what I found was a nice bit of land. I'm not going to lie, you know, it's kind of square shaped. I'm surrounded with water, so it shouldn't take too much to secure my position, at least early days anyway. But equally, there's no real iron or oil really. I've got two patches of iron. I've got this one here, which if I start mining, I'm going to start aggravating this kind of nest of biters. This one, I'm pretty sure since I found it, the biters would have moved in a little bit. And besides, even if I set up some mines, this is a freaking mile away. There's no way, that's not viable until the base is a lot more set. This one is, but I need to kill this nest. Now I had my little car, there was a little nest over here. I thought, let's try out the car, let's see how effective the car is at beating nests. I've never used the car for that purpose before. It wasn't terrible, but I could get access to, I could circle around the nests. Whereas this nest is surrounded by rocks and trees. I can't really get around it. The only thing to defeat it would be a tank. And that's obviously what I've just started researching, is the tank. And that's why, or at least that's why that kind of realization that I was going to have to beat some fighters to get some iron, pushed me into putting oils in my starter factory. This is not normally the way that I go. Normally I have black, green and red science. And that gets me the things, or at least it used to get me all of the things that I needed to build the big base. But that's not the case no more. So, although I've got oil here, and primarily I brought it in so that I can get a tank and some cannon shells, I did at least make this change in plan early enough to be able to include the potential of researching the overhead railway lines, because those things, I'm about to start messing around with the big base, and I would really like to have those things. I mean, I can obviously use ghosts, and that will plan out a certain amount of this stuff. I would just much rather have the actual physical thing. It would look so much better on a time-lapse, factory speak, fundamentally. So although I've got oil here and I've got it here to beat that particular nest, this might be the new strategy, although I said that at the start of the last series. So anyway, we have a starter base. It is making some oil. We have some red computer chips down here. We've got sulfur and engines, and we're making blue science. Now, it's not a lot of blue science because this little patch of oil, this is the only patch of oil that we have. 2 mines, just basically nothing. Just nothing. But it is at least something. I suppose it's not nothing. It's a little something, very little something. But hopefully, well, it should get us. It should get us some cannon shells. Should get us the tank, and hopefully with a little bit of jigging around, I can get it to make purple science as well, and that will give me overhead rails. I really want to start playing with those overhead rails. I didn't get access to them. I didn't even use them on Novice. My last playthrough didn't have any trains at all on the last playthrough. I have had a playthrough. I did get a chance to play with the overhead rails on that playthrough, but it was very late in the game, and it was not really a final thing. It was just I needed to bridge an ocean. Yeah. So I really want to try and lay down, and I want to see what these things can do. when you start kind of laying it down something perfect, you know, with these new directions and angles, how I really want to play with them. So it is actually not that, it's not worked out all that badly, considering, you know, I've got the oils already. So anyway, that's the next thing really, is to wait for this stuff to get enough stuff, research tank, defeat the biter, set up some iron ore, some iron mines over on that patch, and then we can start thinking about the big base, and I can start enacting the pictures that are in my head. Okay then, what we have here is, in my opinion, the strategy implications of this new space age game. And, you know, it is kind of a brand new game, and it does kind of deserve a complete rethink on how these things work. And this is what really kind of represents that in my mind. So we have a small starter factory, and that makes all of the things that will allow us to make the slightly bigger factory, and the slightly bigger factory will make all of the things that we need to get to space. And then when we get to space, we're going to find some new things, for instance like a foundry, and that will change this again, and I'm going to have to knock this down again, and that should be the final factory. So what we have here is just a basic thing. It's just a basic set of production. I'm not really caring about, you know, its position in the factory or anything really. I want a bunch of stuff on the map, and it needs to be able to produce a certain number of stuff, and that's what I've got here. So I think we've got copper here, iron here, steel here, and then stone blocks here. And I'm going to build the circuit boards, blue, red, and green down here. Yeah, pretty basic stuff. Like this is what I consider to be the engine, like, and there's no point building a final engine when we haven't got all of the bits for that engine. You know, steel, copper, iron, blocks, and all the circuit boards. That is the stuff that drives the performance of a factory, and I can't really build any of it. I mean, I could build some of the circuit board stuff. Well, you know, I have got the final recipes; those things don't change. But ultimately, I don't really know performance-wise what I'm doing. You know, what numbers am I aiming for here? Am I going for SPM? What is it that I'm trying to achieve? Because I'm still feel like I'm in the learning phase. I'm trying to build something final that's got some good thought to it, but the big picture, I'm still lots to learn about this new game. Anyway, so because this part is kind of sacrificial, I'm going to knock it down at some point. It doesn't really matter to me. The things that do matter, this is where my mind has been for a good week, or at least a week or two. You know, the tail end of that last series, this is where my mind has been. What things on Novice am I going to keep? What things are important? And the things that I want to keep, the things that are important, firstly, would be the shopping mall. That thing is fiddly. I want to lay it down, and that's wherever I lay it down, that's where it's going to be forever. I want to lay down a rail network so that I've got a basic level of system that trains can get around on regardless of what's going on in the factory. And I want to be able to allow myself to do things like this, which is to build a factory, tear it down, rebuild it at some point in the future. This kind of factory that I'm trying to build is not really designed to be performance. It's more designed to be a kind of a Swiss Army knife that will allow me to impose several different factories onto it. That's kind of where my mind is. I'm not tying myself to any fixed numbers or anything. I've just given myself plenty of room for expansion. You know, what that expansion is, I don't really know. So the plan is, let me just go through the rough plan. This is the little starter factory. This is not going to last very long. The place that it exists is going to be the bus. I've given myself 100 tiles here to fit in whatever resources, materials I'm going to be moving around in this new factory of mine. You know, at the end of the day, we've got conveyor belts, which are 2-3 times the sort of performance. You know, we could get hundreds of stuff on a conveyor belt at the end of the game. So really, space here, not important, but I wanted to give myself enough just in case. So I've given myself 100 tiles. So this is the bus. We're going to have part of the shopping mall up here. I think we're going to have like conveyor belts, inserters, assembly machines, you know, that sort of thing up here. Then we're going to have like furnaces, railway lines, and a whole lot of other shopping mall stuff down here. So I'm going to try and build both sides. What I often do with the shopping malls, I just kind of bring the bus along and I just go in a particular direction. But I want to try and split it, just for elegance sake. I feel like if I can split it and make it look good, I think that would make me much happier. So the shopping mall is going to go here, kind of in the middle. Either side of the shopping mall, I'm going to have this kind of lane here, and these lanes on both sides, I'm going to do the similar on this side, is going to be the lanes where I bring in the resources. So whether that be iron, copper, stone, uranium, oil, whatever. At the top right and top left here, these are going to be the engines, in inverted commas, that's what I call it. It's going to be whatever production I need, iron, steel, copper, and circuit boards. Stone blocks, they might move somewhere else. They generally tend to, it'll find a hole somewhere. It's not a huge thing, and putting it here kind of, it's a little bit uneven. But for the moment, that's where it's going. That might find its way somewhere else in the future. But that's what's going to go here in the fullness of time. And then I'm going to do exactly the same down here, just reflected. So the main engines are going to exist here and here. And by putting it in these corners, I'm hopefully giving myself plenty of room for maneuver and expansion. I can go on forever, more or less. The shopping mall, this can stay fixed where it is. Now, there's a part of me that thinks in my mind that at some point in the future, this main factory might be ginormous. And this little shopping mall is just like a little carbuncle that sticks out the side. But it will always be here. And it'll always be feeding the resources to it. There's a big part of my mind that's just starting to think about quality. And how I potentially might want to think about routing that stuff. That's probably a discussion for another time. Anyway, so that's the big plan. We've got the engine over here, the main engine, not the constructible engine, my engine, in the top right and the top left. Mall in the middle, lanes of trains either side of the mall, and that kind of fixes the mall in position. And then probably uranium and oil, top or bottom, I don't know which way round. That's probably what will happen. I'll have one zone up here for uranium and one zone up here for oil, or vice versa. And then, as I said, stone block somewhere else. So that's kind of the infrastructure that I'm laying down here. I'm giving myself the maximum opportunity for future stuff, because I don't really know. I know what blocks look like in vanilla on novice. You know, I know how many furnaces it takes to do a job. I know how many assembly machines it takes to do a job. I don't know how many foundries it takes to do the job. I don't know what sort of production I don't know any sort of numbers. So that's really the idea behind this whole base at this moment in time. It's just to give myself the flexibility to update it as and when those things come up. Now, I've also been playing around with the overhead railways. Now, these are fun. These are fun. I'm enjoying the. These are good. Now, what I'm actually found myself doing is building the same basic railway network that I had before, and then just plonking like some overhead railway network on top of it. So I feel like what I actually have is too much railway. That's kind of where I feel like I need to maybe come up with some ideas of how I want to scale things back. There's also another part of that, which is, you know, I get hit by my trains all the time. It's very, very, very annoying. And it's always on these paths. Of course it is. I'm running up and down these paths. The trains are coming down the train tracks. They're going to hit me. So I feel like maybe the final answer is to put all of these railway lines that cross paths on the overhead rails, or in fact put the whole base on overhead rails, and then only have them come down to the earth when they need some stations. You know, me being able to run around this base completely free from worrying about dying, essentially, that would be really nice. That would be really nice. So I am still thinking about the train network here. But as is the case for the rest of the base, I feel like if that's what I wanted to do, I could maybe impose that on the system that I have here. I feel like there might be ways for me to be able to achieve that. So in my mind, I feel like I should be able to remove all of the trains that you can see, the train tracks that you can see, and build a new system if I so choose. If I so chose to do. Like the fundamental paths, the walls, the power network, all of the rower ports I'm going to lay down, all of that stuff's going to be fixed. And then it's just a case of me figuring out a happy place with all of these bits and pieces. There's a lot of new toys that I want to that we can play with here, and I just want to find a good place for how they interact with each other. This is nice. I'm not denying it. This is nice. I just feel like we've got a roundabout in the middle, a roundabout here, and another roundabout over here. Just a little bit too much. But anyway, those are minor points, really, in the grand scheme of things. What we really need to be doing is the factory. So we've got most of the main resources over here. I just want to finish off. Well, I do just want to finish off the circuit boards, but until I need some more space. I'm pretty sure I need to remove some more biters in order to. Yeah, this wall's too close in now. Looking at it. So we need some more space. I need to move the wall a little bit. Get those circuit boards in. And then I think start work on the shopping mall. There's a lot of work there. I never really feel properly settled until I've got a proper place for blue conveyor belts. I need so many blue conveyor belts all the time. So until I've got that down, I know I can't produce it until I've got oil, but I just like it to have it down on the map. It just kind of settles me down. Anyway, that's what we're going to be doing. We're just going to be cracking on with more stuff. Yeah. times playing Factorio where it just reaches deep down into your soul and just grabs you and just it won't let go. Like I'm fully invested in the game now. There was a moment at the start where it was like, why am I starting again? I'm giving myself all this pain. You know, there is a good part of Factorio where the beginning is just pain, and you work your way through it in order to get to the fun part, and then at some moment there's like a crossover. I'm not quite sure where that moment was, but we've definitely crossed over from that, right? Okay, anyway. I built the factory. I was meant to talk through this mic like a long time ago, and I was just like, just a little bit more factory. And then I built a bit more, and I was like, just a little bit more factory. I just carried on going. So what we have here is the shopping mall, and I've made a few subtle changes to the way I normally build and set it out. And that is primarily because of one simple change that I've made. And that simple change is to remove gears from the shopping mall. Ordinarily, what I would do is I would build like a few banks of assembly machines just for gears at the beginning, and then I would build all of the things. But, you know, I thought about it, and gears, you know, if we're moltenizing the iron, then it doesn't make any sense to do that. It makes sense to make the gears over in the engine room part of the factory, the other part of the factory which I'm going to demolish at some point and replace with a whole load of foundries, because that's where the molten iron is. So I'm going to put gears in the bus. That's what I've done here. You can see them down here. And what that actually does, you know, from my perspective, is it removes a whole load of area. Like, I'm constantly trying to juggle the amount of production I want the factory to provide me with the amount of area it occupies. Like, you remove a whole load of banks of gears, suddenly it gives me a whole lot less space. Like, the first thing that I originally... The old way of Bigfoot building was to build the conveyor belts first. But I built the conveyor belt block without the gears, and it was too small. Like, that block used to determine everything else. I would build that, and it would determine everything that followed. All of the block sizes would follow the same ultimate size. But you remove the gears, conveyor belts is no longer a big block anymore, and it's no longer critical. Which is quite annoying, because I quite like the fact that the conveyor belts were right in the middle. And now they're up here somewhere. But, you know, I'm a little bit out... At this point, when I was building this and just starting out the shopping mall, I was a little bit outside my comfort zone. I was like, I don't really know how I'm going to judge any of these things. Like, the shapes and the sizes of stuff is all different. You move gears, just one simple thing. You'd think it'd be easy, but it ain't. Yeah, so that's made that one change. Just thinking about while we're here, we can see the conveyor belts occupying the path. Now, I don't like this. When I looked in this Factoriopedia, I swear to you, at some point, I don't know whether I've been dreaming it, I don't know whether it's been changed. I swear to you that I came in here before and there was a little blue diamond next to the max length, which would mean that with quality, we would be able to produce underground belts with longer lengths. I don't know whether that was me just dreaming it or whether it's been removed subsequently, but I didn't check that before I started this factory, and whether it's me assuming it, dreaming it, or whether I did see it and they've changed it, I've assumed that that's now going to be the case. So even with the long green underground belts, it won't reach from here to here. I probably needed, to be honest, no path was... I'd probably needed a path like 2 tiles wide. So I've kind of got two choices at this point, and that is, number one, either leave them in the middle of the path, which is going to annoy me, or two, I download a mod which gives me extra length underground belts. That's going to annoy me also, because I haven't built that where I'm making the conveyor belts. I've got some spaces here, but it's not going to be, it's not going to be in the block. It's just going to sit on it. Yeah, might need some robots to make it work. I don't know. I don't know whether I genuinely don't know whether this is me, whether I've dreamt it. Anyway, moving on. If we take that decision with the gear wheels one step further, we've got this molten iron, then the next logical thing to attack would be low density structure. Like, if we're making all of that molten iron and copper, same decision process, why wouldn't we do the low density structure in the engine room? And that decision has actually huge implications. Like with my shopping mall, the way that I set it out is generally all the little stuff over on the right, on one side, generally one side or the other, the first side that I come to generally. So I've got like assembly machines, conveyor belts, inserters, steam engines, nuclear power plants, you name it, we've got it all on this right hand side, all of the little things. And then I generally do all of the big things on the right hand side. So it used to be low density structure, that's now moved. It used to be rocket control unit, that's now been completely taken out of the game. And so now I'm left with, just on this left hand side of the factory, engines, electric engines, batteries, robots, and modules. But modules, we can't make all 3 versions of any of the modules on this planet. We can't do any final module process. So the only version we can make is version 2. There's no, and you know, if we're not making all of the modules on this planet, why not just make the ones that we need? So now all I'm doing is I'm making speed module 1 and 2 and productivity module 1 and 2, and I've just squeezed it in one block. Like, I don't need too much of it. So this whole left-hand side of the factory has got much, much smaller. Like, there's a lot less things going in it. So I've got this, like this space here. I'm going to fill this space with something very, very specific later on. I've got something cool to go in there later. That's not going to stay blank. But just the overall proportions of the factory, where stuff goes, you know, you make a few little changes. Low density structure, man. Low density structure would probably have occupied the same sort of amount of space as this. That's the sort of size that I've removed from the factory. I mean, it has meant that this whole factory, you know, you remove gears, this whole thing starts looking quite nimble. It doesn't look so big or chunky. It looks like... I'm very pleased with how this has gone down. Every shopping mall is different, and it's kind of... it just comes about as the way that, you know, you put something down, put something next to it. It just kind of comes together. I like the way that this one has come together. Yeah, it's good. Anyway, next things. What we need to be doing is doing some oil processing. That's the next thing. Once we've got some oil processing, we can start thinking about science. But before I do either of those things, I want to play around with the rail networks that I've built. What I've decided is I'm going to go with one of the approaches that I set out earlier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make essentially a monorail system that can't hit me. That's going to be my goal. You know, we're not looking for huge throughput. You know, in the fullness of time, I'm expecting us to have 20, 25 trains running around this system. And it's going to be a big system, you know, it's going to be a big old base. So I'm not expecting to have too many problems with rail throughput. But I would quite like to investigate the potential of me not being hit by trains. That's quite a nice thing to have a think about. And the way that I've done it, I'm going to get hit by these trains one way or the other. So I think I'm going to remove some of the tracks that I've put down and kind of... I'm not really 100%. Let's see how it goes. I need to zoom out the camera so we can see all of this, because this is going to get big. All right. Yeah, let's do it. the game still has its hooks deep into me. I'm still in that mode of just one more factory, just one more little bit of factory, just one little... I can't put it down at the moment. I think that's just novice. Like, I know novice. This is the bit that I know kind of really, really, really well. So I've got the picture in my head. I just need to put it down, and that's taken a very, very long time. Well, we're getting there. I think what ultimately is the realization is that I thought I might get this whole thing done in episode 1. That's just not going to happen. I think I've got another 20 or 30 hours before I can call this settled. Anyway, what we've been up to. So I've got my monorail system going, and I'm really, really happy with it. Really happy with it. All right, one thing before we get to the monorail system. We had a whole transition get corrupted in that last montage. I'm not happy about that at all. It is the first time it's ever happened. I've never had footage go corrupted like that, like a few frames maybe. And, you know, if a few frames get corrupted in the middle of a normal, when we're just filming a factory, you're not going to notice it. You lose a few frames in a transition when the camera's moving, you're going to notice it, but it's not going to be too bad. I think I lost like 250 frames there. Just took a massive bite out of it. I'm assuming that it's my fault for the time being. It's the first time it's ever happened. Years I've been using this mod. So I'm assuming it's my fault that I've done something. I'm going to be paying much closer attention to it. It's really annoying because that's going to be in the final video, the final time lapse now. You know, anyway, the perfect time lapse is always what I'm aiming for, and I don't mind if I make the mistake and ruin it, but to have it just taken away from me. Anyway, so we've got the monorail system going. There are a few places where the railway on the ground crosses a path, like here, where I could potentially get hit. And so I've brought in something that I used to do in some of my old factories, which was to try and make these gated crossing points where the railway crosses a path. And whenever a train comes in, the gates will close and the lights will go red. And that kind of prevents me from getting hit. At least some of the, you know, sometimes the trains are very quick and the gates will close whilst sometimes it's just inevitable. But, you know, it's not, I could never get these to work with the rail networks that I used to have. Curved rails crossing paths, funny angles. The gates never quite worked perfectly. So, although this was something that I liked and I used to have in my maps quite a lot, I used to spend quite a lot of time putting these things in. They've kind of been taken out because I couldn't get it to work perfectly. But now, these overhead rails, I can choose very specific locations for where these are crossing the paths and make sure that they're not curved or going in any funky angles. So I'm really, that's a really nice thing to have back in the game again. There's a few other places where the rails cross the paths, and I've done something similar. I'm going to try and run over there so we can get there before the end. Also, what we've done is the science. You know, science is science. Science, yeah, is what it is. Going to get the job done. It's probably more assembly machines and stuff and labs that I need, but hey ho, it's not going to be terrible. So yeah, this is the other junction where it crosses the path. It's a good solution. Anyway, we also got to oils, which was a big thing. Another milestone to get done and dusted. Obviously, we've only really got the initial parts of oil done. There's a whole load of like little processes that I need to get sorted. But, you know, I need to bring this episode to a close at some point. Otherwise, I'll be here forever. So, future plans. We need to finish off this oil. I think I'm going to put it in this lake. So I need more space. The biters are starting to settle into my land. I need to spend some time clearing some land. This is not the density that they are. I went and wandered over here. This is probably more what they're like. I went and wandering looking for some uranium. I found some. So at some point I'm going to have to, some point soon to be honest, I'm going to have to claim that. And I'm going to definitely have to claim this as well in order to get the rest of the oil in there. But all of that will be for the next episode. A lot of hours done in this one. A lot of hours. I'm settling in. I'm trying to create something very, very, very final. Something that's going to give me a lot of pleasure for the hundreds of hours potentially that the rest of this run could take. But yeah, that's it. I hope it's been good. Till next time.